Congratulations on the purchase of your new central vacuum system. It will make cleaning your home easier and improve indoor air quality. This video will explain how your system works and how to install it in your home in just 7 steps. In fact, you've already completed step number 1. You've purchased your powerful new system. Here's why your central vacuum system is so powerful and so effective at removing dirt and dust from your home. This is the power unit, with a motor that's much larger than you'll find in upright vacuums. And it's more powerful, up to 5 times more powerful. And because it holds more dust, dirt, and debris, you won't have to empty it as often, only 2 or 3 times a year. The power unit collects dust by pulling it through tubing in the walls of your home, tubing you're going to learn how to install with this video. The third ingredient in this powerful mix is the inlet valve. We'll show you how to install yours and attach them to the tubing. Then it's a matter of plugging in the hose, turning on the power, and then easily and conveniently ridding your home of dirt, dust, dust mites, pollen, and other allergens. Now let's get started. For a solid, superior installation, all you have to do is follow 3 important tips. 1. Watch this video. 2. Read the manual. This handy guide goes into detail on everything we can't cover in this video. Carry it with you and use it as your guide throughout the process. And tip number 3, read up on your local building codes so your installation complies with them. 2 other notes. First, keep in mind that the tubing and fittings you'll be using are specifically designed for your central vacuum system. Other types of tubing, like plumbing pipe, won't work because they're different sizes. They won't fit. Second, because of continuous design updates, some of the components you see here may not look exactly like the ones in your central vacuum kit. Okay, let's go. First, assemble all the tools you're going to need. There's nothing too exotic: an electric drill, a saw, a couple of wire hangers. Check the manual for a complete list. And be sure to wear your safety glasses. A hacksaw and miter box will work to cut the tubing, but a pipe cutter will give you cleaner, straighter cuts, and because it creates a smoother surface, it will help eliminate clogs in the tubing. And while an electric drill will work just fine, using a right-angle drill can make the job a whole lot easier. Next, lay out and inventory all of the parts according to the manual, so you'll know they're all there, and so you'll know what each one's called. Your manual can help you identify each one. Now, before you can start using the tools, you first have to determine the number of inlets you'll need and where to place them. This might be the most important step in the whole process, because proper planning now will make installation easier and guarantee your central vacuum system reaches throughout the house. Plan on using only the interior walls of your home if you can, so you won't have to fight the insulation typically found inside exterior walls. Select a location for an inlet that's as centrally located as possible. The inlet must be within 6 feet or 1.8 meters of a power source to provide electrical power to the rotating brushes in the power head. This low voltage wiring sends a signal to the power unit to turn it on and off. If you're installing your central vacuum system while your home is still under construction, you can use electrified valves. Electrified valves are used in new construction, and installation must be coordinated with an electrician to hook up the electrical line after the tubing has been installed. Of course, electrified valves should be installed before the drywall is hung. These have both low voltage and household wiring connections built in, so you won't need an electrical outlet nearby. Okay, back to the job at hand. Make sure the spot you've chosen for the inlet is between the studs and sound it out to make sure the space is open behind the wallboard. You need to also check the back side of the wall you've selected to make sure it's clear of obstructions such as utilities and outlets. Next, you need a helper to hold the end of the hose at the proposed inlet spot. Then take the other end and walk around, or use a piece of cord or string that is 30 feet long, the length of the hose. You want to be able to reach everywhere, even with furniture in the way. You'll find you may need to change the location, or you may need to add another inlet to cover the entire floor. One inlet usually lets you cover about 700 square feet, or 60 square meters. You'll need to repeat this on each floor of your home. What about installing inlets upstairs? Because there are finished walls above and below the second floor sole plate, installing upstairs inlets can take a little bit more ingenuity. You could place an inlet outside a closet and then run the tubing through the wall and through the inside of the closet. Another option is to run the tubing up into the attic and then across and down to the inlet. Yet another solution is to install the upstairs inlet directly into the floor. The inlet can be set flush with the floor, but remain instantly accessible. Plastic inlets are fine as long as they're installed next to the wall where no one will step on them, but metal floor inlets provide added durability. Now, let's decide where to place the power unit. To be sure that dirt, dust, and allergens are effectively removed from living areas in your home, put the power unit in your attached garage. If you don't have an attached garage, the basement is the best location. Find a spot that's relatively close to an electrical source. The area should have plenty of room all around the power unit to let air circulate for adequate motor cooling. And make sure there's enough room to reach and empty the dirt receptacle or filter easily. If your walls are finished, use a stud finder to determine exactly where to set the screws. For the best support, hang the power unit on a stud. If you have to deal with concrete or block walls, mark the holes and use a masonry bit. Then sink either plastic or lead anchors into the holes and screw the mounting bracket into place. You can drill a hole in an exterior wall to run a venting tube outside, but because your system filters air so well, it's really not necessary. To install tubing to carry dirt and dust to the power unit, first plan your route. Running the tubing beneath the subfloor is recommended whenever possible because it makes tubing easier to work with and it creates the shortest path between the inlets and the power unit. If the vacuum tubing has to run next to a water heater or chimney flue, for your safety and to comply with building codes, use metal central vacuum system tubing for that section. If the tubing runs through an unheated attic or other unprotected environment, wrap or cover it with insulation to prevent condensation and the possibility of clogging. All right, you've got your inlet sites picked out, you've hung your power unit, and you've charted the simplest, straightest route for the tubing. Now you're ready to get out the toolbox to begin installing your inlet valves. First, use a screwdriver to wedge the molding aside, then take a wire hanger and snip a straight piece from it. Insert the wire into the chuck of your drill. And then, holding the drill vertically, right beneath the intended inlet site, slowly drill down into the floor alongside the baseboard or where the wall and floor intersect. Then go downstairs. There's the wire. Now you can see exactly where the inlet's going to be right above you. Next, drill a 2 1/4 inch diameter hole. That's about 5.4 centimeters in the bottom of the hollow wall through what's called the sole plate. Make sure you're cutting in between the walls. The tubing is 2 inches or 5 centimeters in diameter, so the hole will give you some room to manipulate the tubing. Now grab a flashlight and take a peek for obstructions. If it looks clear, take a piece of tubing and run it up to check for obstructions. If there are obstructions, you may need to move the inlet site. If there are no obstructions, it's time to go back upstairs and mark the inlet location on the wall. First, measure up to the center of the electrical outlet. Then, measure up from the floor the same distance at the proposed inlet site. This will be the center of your inlet valve. Take a wall mounting bracket, cut or snap off the new construction flange, and dispose of it. In new construction, nail the tab to the stud. Use a level, then measure and create a precise box using these dimensions. Take a utility knife and score the outside lines. Then, use the utility knife or a drywall saw to cut a hole through the drywall. Now it's time for some fittings. Make sure the open end faces the direction it will eventually meet the tubing, usually straight down. If your tubing has to run from the attic, remember that the opening of the 90-degree fitting will have to face upward. When applying glue, never apply it to the inside of fittings or tubing. Apply glue only to the outside of the tubing. This will prevent glue from creating obstructions inside the tubing, which could clog your system. Put some glue around the outside of the mounting bracket. Then twist the 90-degree fitting into place. You will need to install the low voltage wire before you install the tubing. First, run about 6 inches of wire through the bracket guide hole. Then, strip an inch of insulation from the low voltage wires and attach each end to one of the screws on the back of the inlet valve. Now, attach a weight to the end of the low voltage wire and drop it down to the basement or crawl space. Gently insert the mounting bracket into the wall hole, first down, then up, centering it. Get a wire hanger and insert the hooked end of the hanger down into the 90-degree elbow to hold the bracket in place. Then slide the inlet valve into the mounting bracket. Now just screw the valve into place. A word of caution: inlet kits come with both long and short screws, so be sure to use the short screw in the hole facing the elbow, since the long screw could puncture it. Remember to refer to the manual for full details. If you can't locate a hollow wall or the space between your walls isn't wide enough, there are two alternatives. The first, as we've already discussed, is to run the tubing through a concealed area, such as the inside of a closet. Then run the tubing downward. The other is to forget the wall entirely and use a floor-mounted inlet. For two-story homes, you'll need one or more inlets on each floor. Instead of trying to line up inlets from one floor to the next, the easiest and best way to handle second-story inlets is to run a separate line from the upstairs inlet valve to another branch or to the main trunk line. Upstairs, beneath the site you selected for the inlet, cut a hole just large enough to allow you to reach the second floor sole plate. Then, from the basement, insert a length of tubing long enough to reach through the hole in the second floor sole plate to the site for the valve. Your goal is to fit the top of the tubing inside the inlet valve installed in the second-story wall. Of course, installing the inlet valve is the same as before. And remember, other ways to reach the upstairs in your home are through the interiors of closets or pantries, beneath a staircase, or with floor inlets. If you're planning to install a sweep inlet, an automatic dustpan, a very popular option for the kitchen, mudroom, and bath, here are some pointers. First, determine the best place to install the sweep inlet, usually beneath a cabinet, and remove any molding or baseboard. Then drill a pilot hole and find the wire in the floor below. Once again, drill up through the floor to check for obstructions and to make sure you can connect the tubing to the main line. If there are no obstructions, enlarge the hole in the floor beneath the cabinet and check the clearances. Now return to the kitchen to measure and saw the rectangular hole for the sweep inlet and fasten the inlet into place. In the basement, attach the tubing and string the low voltage wire just as you would for any inlet. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Time to install the tubing. Run the tubing up through the hole you cut in the sole plate and fit the tubing into the elbow joint in the back of the inlet valve above you. One of the most crucial things you'll need to do is make absolutely straight cuts. Angled cuts can lead to crooked tubing and gaps that reduce suction power, or to pockets that could accumulate dirt and clog or block the tubing. Remember, 3/4 of an inch on each end of the tubing will go into a fitting, so take that into consideration when measuring and cutting. And be sure to file and deburr each end of the tubing with a knife or file before you fit it into place. Next, just apply glue to the tubing only and twist it tightly into the fitting. Now, all you need to do is measure each section of tubing according to what you need. Measure, cut, deburr, glue, and connect. It's a good idea to piece together 2 or 3 sections of tubing without glue at first to make sure things fit properly. Then mark the connections so you put them together the same way. While assembling the tubing, use clamps to hold the sections in place. Wherever you connect to an inlet, you'll also have to connect the wiring. Strip the wires and join one from each inlet to the wire leading to the power unit. To make sure the polarity is right, always attach wires of the same color to each other, typically copper to copper and silver to silver. To hold low voltage wire in place, use these nifty do-it-yourself clamps made by cutting the ends off any extra tubing. If you have 2 runs of tubing, you'll want to join them to the trunk line going to the power unit. These sweep T fittings are included for that purpose. But a word of caution, always make sure the curve in the fitting points toward the power unit. Otherwise, dirt, dust, and debris could accumulate and block the tubing. If you have to drill through blocks or concrete, you'll probably have to rent a hammer drill or masonry hole saw. Then, run the tubing through and patch the hole once you're up and running. Before drilling, check your local building code for special firewall penetration regulations. Your code will also tell you if steel tubing is required. Now, hang the power unit on the mounting bracket. Connect the low voltage wires to the power unit using the supplied connectors. Then, plug the power unit into the dedicated electrical outlet. The sentry light should come on. Flip the switch and the power unit should come to life. With all systems go, attach the last section of tubing to the power unit. Do not glue this section because you may need to disconnect the system at some future date. And if your system came with a muffler, clamp it to the exhaust pipe. Installing a muffler can reduce power unit noise by as much as 50%. All that's left to do is check the quality of your installation. First, check to see if you have a closed system. With no hose or handle attached and all inlet valves closed, there should be little or no air coming through the exhaust on the power unit. Now, with the system running, walk through your home. If you hear whistling or hissing, you may have forgotten to glue a connection. Be sure to check the basement and attic areas too. Have your helper plug the hose into each of the inlet valves to be sure you can turn the power on. Turn off the switch on the hose handle. If it does not shut off, the low voltage wires are crossed somewhere, usually at an inlet valve. That's it. You've just installed your own central vacuum system. You've just made cleaning easier while improving the air quality in your home. Congratulations!